and welcome to another episode of Heart-Centered Conversations with me, Jane McDowell, the podcast where I love to talk to people about books that have inspired them, shifted their perception, and helped them to do amazing things in their life and the world. And today, it's my very great pleasure to introduce my guest, Sjouke. Sjouke, would you like to tell everyone all about yourself?
I would do, yes. Thank you, Jane. Thank you for inviting me on the podcast. Delighted to talk about books, my favourite thing on the planet. I am a certified executive coach and HR consultant. I run my own business, and I work with global companies across the world. So some big names that you would know and some other names that you would not know. And I am also a certified one of many coach and trainer, and that's a specific coaching program for women. So that's what I spend my working time doing. Yeah, books are really an invaluable part of what I do. It's an everyday thing for me.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Happy to talk about it.
Wonderful. So which book would you like us to centre our conversation around today, Sjouke?
So, of course, I had it in my hand a minute ago, but I've lost it. Anyway, it's called Drive.
Yeah.
It's by a guy called Daniel Pink, an American guy, and it's the truth, the surprising truth about what really motivates us. And I discovered this book quite a while ago now, actually. My oldest boy was asked to write an essay for his IB, and how does Nichols' goal motivation theory explain youth participation in sport? Like, oh my God, how boring. Anyway,
that sounds like a really very academic title for a school.
It was very academic, and they were asked to go to the university library to find papers that they could write this essay on. And we live in Switzerland, in Basel, and obviously it was all in German. So I said, right, we'll go to Manchester University Library, where I had a ticket. Oh. And off we went, and we spent the whole day photocopying all of these academic research papers, basically. And because I'm a sad rabbit, I read a lot of them, and they were all about motivation and what motivates people. Anyway, and then about 2 weeks later, a work colleague, gave me this book. He said, oh, look, here's this book by Daniel Pink about motivation.
Yeah.
This guy had brought together all of this research in a book and made loads of money out of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you hadn't actually found his book in the Manchester Uni Library?
No, I didn't find it there. What I did was I read the research papers that the book was based on. So one of the reasons why I really like this book is that it's based on the science. Yeah. And I feel comfortable about it because I've read the papers that he's based the book on. So that's the story of how I got introduced to Drive. And
so is that sort of science-based sort of evidence, is that what's quite key to you being able to consume a book and take on board what it's saying? Or do you ever go a bit more woo-woo? I'm just interested.
Oh, I go really woo-woo. So
because I was thinking with your one of many coaching, it's amazing sort of model, and it is quite woo-woo, isn't it? So yeah.
Well, okay, so there's three things there that I'd like to kind of pick up on. I think the first thing is that I work with pharmaceutical companies in animal health, companies that are manufacturing things. So, you know, there's quite a high standard for compliance and stuff. I work in an HR environment where HR is trying to become more data-based instead of, you know, fluffy. Everybody goes, oh, it's all fluffy. Well, actually, no, we use data. And so for me, it's important that when I'm working with a client that, you know, what I'm doing is data-based. It's based on the research. And so if I say to them, you know, mastery, autonomy, and purpose are the things that motivate people, I know that's true because I know I've got the research to support it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is one of many. So this is a women's coaching program, which you know, that's probably how we got in touch. There are lots of candles and meditation and you know, fluffy things. But again, a lot of the techniques that are used are science-based.
Yeah.
And Jo Martin, she's a medical doctor, and she's done her research on cognitive behavior therapy, neurolinguistic programming, and all those things. So that's also quite research-based, even though it might not seem obvious.
Mm.
But then there's science fiction and fantasy, and I love, you know, Twilight was a fantastic set of books. I love Lord of the Rings. Dune was, I remember reading that as a I don't know, 12, 13-year-old.
Yeah.
Fantastic, fascinating. So it doesn't have to be real. It doesn't have to be science-based. I can, you know, escape. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I guess it kind of throws up that old question of, you know, does life imitate art? Does art imitate life? And, you know, that whole kind of, so the whole kind of science fiction and what's possible and what could become reality in the future or the near future is always something that's kind of been fascinating to the human mind, isn't it? So, yeah. I
think it's a really nice vehicle for exploring possibilities.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, my husband thinks it's rubbish. It's not real. And I think, well, actually it allows you to do things that, you know, maybe wouldn't be credible in real life. Although there are some wacky things that happen in real life, but anyway, you know, and so it allows you to explore possibilities. And actually a lot of really good science fiction is about all of the things that we are concerned about. So love and loyalty and friendship. And I mean, one of the actually really influential books, and I don't know why this is a book that I read, I must have been about, I don't know, 8. And it's called A Man Who Was Magic by Paul, I think his name was Gallico or Gallico, I think. And it was about a man who was magic. But actually what it was really about was love and friendship. And that book really stuck with me, about, you know, taking care of other people, doing things for others. So there are some life lessons that you can get from reading even something that's totally made up and not true.
Yeah, well, I mean, just look at Shakespeare. All of Shakespeare's plays really kind of strike at the heart of the human condition, don't they? And, you know, all of our kind of fears and insecurities, and, you know, what, going back to what you were saying, what motivates us, you know, if it's fear, if it's greed, if it's love, you know, all of those things. And so going back to Drive.
Yes.
When you read that, and obviously it was very exciting for you because it put together all that information that you'd found in all those research papers and put it into one neat package for you. But having read it, then how did that help you kind of further your offering to your clients or your understanding of how you could work with people?
Right. So I think the first thing is that it really sets the whole thing about, you know, what we believe about motivation into question. And when you go and work with an organization, and even when I was an HR director working in a big global pharma company, you know, managers come to you and they go, oh yeah, I need to pay so and so more money because, you know, he's going to leave or he's demotivated. And the thing is that never really worked. You know, it might work for 10 minutes, but then people forget that they've had a pay rise, and the issues that they had are still there.
They still wake up with that Monday morning feeling, even if they're getting paid more for it.
Exactly. So it was clear to me that leaders were not addressing the real issues. And you can see then when you read Drive, the three things that motivate people are mastery. So that's that's getting better at stuff, you know, and that's why we get satisfaction from learning to play an instrument or learning to code, and we do it for free. You know, we spend our evenings doing pottery classes trying to work out how to get better, and that is intrinsically satisfying.
Yeah.
The second thing is, I've done this in the wrong order actually, it's autonomy, mastery and purpose, but anyway, autonomy is that we want to be self-directed. We want to, we're much more effective when we can choose the time that we do something, the task that we do, and the technique, you know, the how do we do it, or who we're working with. So in my practice, my my coaching and HR consultancy, knowing these things helps me give leaders ideas about how they can better work with their teams. And the most important one is purpose. So, you know, everybody has a purpose, but they might execute that in different ways. So your purpose might be, I want to look after my family.
Yeah. One
person might do that by working all the hours that God sends. Another person might think, no, actually, I need to be at home spending time with them. You know, the purpose means different things to different people, but understanding what that is, again, helps you work with that person more effectively and helps you to engage them.
And it's so important for people's well-being and their mental health, isn't it? And you know,
yeah.
I'm guessing that, you know, the more you work with your clients on how they, you know, put those in place in the workplace, the happier their staff are, the less absenteeism, the lower rate of turnover of staff, and all those kinds of issues. There's a really good book that touches on that, and by Johann, and it's called Lost Connection. And he talks about how, you know, a lot of people in the West, especially, you know, are doing jobs that they don't feel like they have any purpose. It's just literally a way to pay the rent in order to keep a roof over their heads, kind of thing.
Right.
And that the more people have a sense of achievement when they go to work, and the more they have a sense of purpose, and that what they're doing is, you know, adding to the, you know, the good for the world.
Yes.
The more easy it is for them to engage and be good employees, and basically to be happier in themselves. And that's what we all want, right? We all want to be happy, whatever that might look like for each of us. But, you know, so I think that, you know, driving home those principles into companies, especially when they've got huge workforces, really fantastic thing to be doing, you know. So
no, and it is really motivational, because you have these conversations with people and they go, oh yeah, you're right. And you can see it because you know, you say to them, well, so why do you come to work? You know, what motivates you? And I mean, yes, we all need to get paid. I mean, if we didn't get paid, we wouldn't go to work, because we do need to pay the mortgage. So there are some, you know, but pay is a satisficer. So you know, you need to get paid enough to be at work, but once you've got enough, then what motivates you to go the extra mile? What motivates you to be engaged? And these are the things that bring mastery, autonomy, and purpose. Are the things that bring you engagement. They bring you satisfaction. They bring you fulfillment.
Yeah.
And sometimes, even if the work's boring, you know, how can you? And it helps you ask questions. Well, how can I make that more interesting? How can I add some more challenge into it? How can I relate it to the person? I don't know, I can't even say it. The purpose of the person.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just provides a vehicle for helping people to make some changes that make everybody's life better, basically.
Yeah. So is what you do with the companies that you work with, And the way that you work, is that common across the board, or is this quite unique to how you work?
Oh, good question. Well, I mean, there are lots of executive coaches and HR consultancies out there, and big companies like Korn Ferry or McKinsey, etc. And I'm sure that they all use similar kind of, ideas and materials. Yeah, I mean, I personally think it's really important to have a science base to what you're doing. I think there are probably some individual practitioners out there who are not quite so focused on that. The big companies like Korn Ferry, etc., would definitely be using as much science-based, as much of a science-based approach as they can. So yeah.
And I suppose navigating the research as well, because you can look at lots of research papers that come out with results that say that this is 10%, well, this is 90%, exactly. And another paper that will say, well, this is actually 65% and this is 2%, because of who, in some cases, who commissions that research, and is there some bias in it, etc.
Yes.
So
which is why I was so happy that Daniel Pink had done all that work. It's like, great, he's kind of, because you're right, when we read all those papers for William's, paper that he went on to write, I mean, there was a lot of stuff in there, and you've got to pull out the, so yeah, thank you, Daniel, for doing such a good job.
Yeah. So just out of interest, how did your son's paper turn out?
Well, he got an A for it, and I can't even remember now what he went on about, but basically I just gave him the papers and he went off to write his thing and handed it in. So yeah, no, he was very pleased.
Amazing.
We would not have got that result if we tried to do it in German, I can tell you.
Yeah, but what an amazing opportunity for him to have just a hop off to Manchester from Switzerland to go to the library. I mean,
well, thank God for EasyJet is all I can say. I think the flights cost us like 35 quid. So,
wow.
It was a day trip, and it was good fun as well. Good fun to be in that library with him.
Yeah, I have to say there's a big part of me that is thinking that's just criminal. It's 35 quid to get on a plane and come back.
Well, this was a few years. I'd just like to say that was, that was about 10 years ago. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But even then I would have.
Even then.
Yeah, but and that's just that's me, and I think that the fact that your love of books and your you said your ticket to Manchester Uni Library, and just that passion about going there because you knew that you would find all that treasure, and you came back with it all, and it opened up so much opportunity for your son and for you and for all the clients that you work with. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah, and I can't explain to you, the feeling that I get when I walk into a library. Like, yes, fantastic, I'm here.
Libraries and bookshops, I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh, look at all those possibilities. What do I know? What can I learn? It's just, I love it. I mean, there's a little bookcase there downstairs. I've got rows and rows and rows. My husband made me give away a lot of them. And when we moved here, I had 40 boxes of books. The moving
such a
people,
wrench, isn't it, to get rid of a book?
Yeah, the moving people were horrified. They're like, I'm not giving them up.
Yeah, I've got books on my shelves, I haven't picked up for 30 odd years. I could never give them away. It would be like giving away
your child,
family jewels or something.
Yeah,
because they're always in your heart, aren't they? Especially when they've really touched you. But it's always good to know that you can go to the bookcase at any time and just pick it up and open it, and all the friends that you had when you read that book are in the book, like
yes.
you know, it's so evocative when you read a book when you haven't read it for a while, and you kind of remember things that were happening to you when you were reading the book as well. I don't know if that happens to you. It's kind of a not just a trip down memory lane as far as what's in the book, but what was going on in your life when you read it the first time. A bit like when you hear a piece of music you haven't heard for a long time, you suddenly takes you back to your old flat, or, you know, pub you used to go to, or club, or whatever.
Actually, that's true. I mean, another favorite book, and I've got so many, is To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. And I love that book. I love the fact that Virginia Woolf was writing about women in the early 20th century, and that her women all have some power. And Mrs. Ramsay in the book, I mean, she's the glue that holds the whole family together. And you know, when we're in her head, it's an incredible place to be. So I love that. But what I really love is the language. And you know, a core-shaped wedge of darkness, and a lemon foam. They're really like these little things that I remember. And then the context for it was this fantastic English teacher that we had, Miss Sharp. She was so trendy, and she had long leather boots, and she wore quite short things. And, you know, we were like, oh, wow, she's amazing.
I want to be her.
Yeah, I want to be her. And she probably had, you know, not long been out of university, and but she also just brought a different perspective to life. And I loved my other English teacher, Miss Fozard, who was brilliant. But again, it was just to have that different approach, really sparked something. And so To the Lighthouse brings me back to that classroom in a porter cabin in Macclesfield.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, and now you're sitting in Switzerland, surrounded by your books, with some missing from when you had to move.
Exactly. See, my books are my home. I bring them with.
Yeah. I'm sure you bought some more since then, right? So.
Oh yeah, lots. Yeah. I talked to my husband about that. He thinks we'd be rich if I hadn't bought so many books.
So, just finally, Sjouke, tell me what you're reading at the moment.
Well, I have got Lessons by Ian McEwan sitting on my thing to read. I have to confess, I haven't started it. I am reading, and I've forgotten the title, but it's basically about the history of Genghis Khan.
Oh.
Yes, really good, nicely written.
Yeah.
And we're just at the bit where he had a pretty rough life on the Mongolian steppes.
Yeah.
People were kidnapped and blah blah blah, killed and everything. Anyway, he's just at the point where he's beginning to create his political power, his leadership. So it's really interesting.
Well, that's fascinating, because that is the second time that book has been talked about on this podcast.
Oh, well, there you are. It's definitely a book to read.
Worth reading then, by the sounds of it. Awesome.
Yeah, no, sometimes history books are a bit dry, but this is really well written.
Yeah.
So I definitely recommend that. And then I've got a French one, Harlan Coben, who I like. He writes thrillers. I mean, they're kind of like what I call airplane books.
Yeah.
They don't require a great deal of thinking, but they're entertaining and racy. And I've no idea what the title is in English, but it's called Ne pas gagner. So I don't know.
Is that don't win, or
don't win? Yeah.
Put me showing off with my French then.
Yeah.
My A-level served me well, obviously.
And I've also got Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere on the go.
Oh wow! So that's 4 books on the go, right?
Yeah, well, there's probably another couple around the house that are kind of lying open. So I multitask with the books.
Yeah. I think that's fine. You know, it's a bit like watching more than one Netflix series or something at the same time,
exactly,
isn't it? Yeah. So, you know.
Yeah, I feel happy if I've got, you know, a collection of things. Oh, what I did really just read as well was some Elly, I've forgotten her name. She writes detective novels, and the main character is this lady called Harbinder Kaur, I'm not quite sure how to say the last name. And the way she writes them is really interesting because she does it from the different points of view of the people involved. And she never starts.
Like Irving Welsh.
Yeah, she never starts with the main character, Harbinder. She always starts with the people who are involved in the issue. And so you don't get to Harbinder until, like, you know, a third of the way through the book. And you go, where is she? Where is she? But it's really, I quite like the way she writes those.
Yeah, I quite like those different viewpoints. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Irving Welsh, even though quite a lot of what he writes is quite disturbing. But I love the way he writes, and I love that he can just change the voice in the narrative so seamlessly and easily, and you just know from the moment you start reading the chapter who it is that's narrating the chapter. I think is such an amazing skill. Yeah.
Well, and what she does is she overlaps each thing. So you get, I don't know, let's say the woman's called Carol. So you get Carol's view of a particular event. And then you might get Emily's view of the same event, but so there's an overlap, and they have these totally different perceptions of the same event. And that's really nice. Yeah, just very clever and interesting to see.
And also so true to life, because, you know, we all have very different perceptions when we're, you know, even at the same event, you know. My experience of going to see a gig, for example, is very different to my husband's, because I'm only 5'2", and there's usually someone who's 6 foot plus stood in front of me. Whereas my husband can just see the stage. So my memories of gigs are very different to his, because mine are only peppered with a few views of the stage unless I get down the front, which happens less these days, and less inclined to get into the mosh pit, but you know.
Right, okay. You're standing back now so you can get a better panoramic view.
Yeah, but not so many elbows and whatever, but yeah. Cool. Well, listen, Sjouke, it's been absolutely wonderful talking to you, and I love your passion for book. It's very infectious. And yes, I shall add to the notes of this podcast some of the books that you mentioned, so that any listeners can go out and have an explore for themselves.
Yeah, if you need me to verify some of the titles, because my memory is absolutely rubbish, I can quickly drop me a text and I'll look them up. But
awesome.
If we can persuade people to read more, I will be very happy.
Yeah, and you know, just it's fantastic what's become, you know, possible for you and all your clients because of that, you know, one essay that your son was doing and the book that you ended up reading, Drive by Daniel Pink.
Indeed, Drive by Daniel Pink.
Go read it, everyone. All right then. Well, thanks for listening, everyone, and I'll see you in the next episode.